more karate, more superhero, less superhero. This time around, we're looking at Karate Kid number 11 from 1977. It's by Jack C. Harris, Ric Estrada, and some kind of additional material by Barry Jameson. Barry Jameson is a nom de plume of David Michelinie.
Oh, really?
Some big, yeah, he's like a 70s guy. He wrote a bunch of Spider-Man and a bunch of 70s
Oh, yeah.
DC stuff.
Was he over at Marvel at the time and he was moonlighting, or?
That must be it. I kind of feel like he's like in Karate Kid, like they used his real name in like one or two issues, and then this Barry Jameson took over.
Okay.
They had kind of a weird revolving door on Karate Kid. First issue was by Levitz, and then Paul Levitz, and then Michelinie wrote it. Jack C. Harris wrote this issue. I think he was an editor and he took over, did like a fill-in for this one, maybe. Bob Rozakis wrote the next issue I saw. And it only lasted, 15, 16 issues?
Yeah, you can always kind of tell a book is a sinking ship, like 3 issues before it ends, like there's like a different artist every issue, or like the writers are constantly changing. Everyone's looking for regular work.
I think even on the letters page, like more than one time, maybe 2 times, they kind of announced that they're kind of reformatting the book and changing the focus from, I don't know what, from more karate, less karate,
right,
more superhero, less superhero.
It's like a TV series that's desperate to stay on the air, and they radically change the plot.
Yeah.
Setup.
The reason I wanted to look at this one is because it has this great, in my opinion, great artwork by Ric Estrada. I think when I first saw Ric Estrada artwork, I was kind of turned off. I was not into it, but it's probably because he was working with an inker that didn't do justice to his artwork. When you see his solo artwork, it's really unbelievable, in my opinion. It's just great cartooning, great comic booky looking stuff. It's a really good looking comic book.
Yeah. Was this before, after, or during his tenure on Chips, like as Punch?
Different guy.
I like his I've seen a bunch of his like kind of New Yorker style cartoons. Have you seen those?
I don't think so. Well, like, would they have like gray wash on them?
Maybe some of them. Usually they're just stark black and white. They look a little like they look New Yorkerish, like little Arno-ish, like kind of remind me of like Otto Soglo, maybe a little, but with thicker brushstrokes.
I could see that. Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of those.
And it's about as different as his superhero stuff like this is from his like war comics.
Oh, I have seen that drawing. Now that you mention it, did you just found that in like Google image search or something?
Right.
Oh yeah, that's pretty nice too. That's kind of like Gene Deitch type of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like everybody was drawing that way for a little bit in the 50s and 60s.
Right. Like early Hank Ketchum, or what's his name? The Family Circus fella early on.
Oh yeah, Bill Keane. Or like Roy Doty or something.
Yeah, there's a good amount of it online. You should check it out.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
I mean, yeah, had a lot of styles.
Really ran the gamut and could do just about everything, but it's all in a really, in my opinion, really distinct style. Like you see that if you know his other work, you're not going to be confused when you see a romance comic by him, or like an editorial illustration by him, or, for example, or things like that. Like once you know, this is a Ric Estrada drawing.
I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but I've read a bunch of his like EC War stuff. Like a bunch of it is in, or a couple stories at least, are in like the Harvey Kurtzman Fantagraphics EC stuff.
Really? I didn't know he did EC stuff.
Yeah. He did a few war stories over there.
I mean, he mostly everything at DC. The majority of his DC stuff is war comics.
Right. And it's weird, like the style between that and Karate Kid, it's like night and day. They're like very, I mean, I see a little commonality, I guess, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that this Karate Kid issue, it's kind of scaled back a little bit
Mhm.
compared to the I don't know, all the other stuff, the war stuff, or even the romance comics that he did.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of what else he did that was like
Well,
that, like he did all the artwork.
the war stuff that I've seen is there's a lot of extra detail, a lot of texture and stuff in it. And the Karate Kid, especially this issue, I mean, it's very loose, like drawn with a brush, very gestural.
Hmm.
They just seem pretty different to me, but I don't know enough about I don't think I've seen any of his romance comics. I saw some Wonder Woman he did. He did some
Hmm.
Spider-Man. He's done a lot of stuff.
He did a comic that came out from Atlas. It's a magazine size one called Devilina, kind of like a Vampirella type of thing.
Oh, okay.
And he did 2 issues of this, and I think he wrote and illustrated them, and it's like this satanic, sexy lady type of character, but he's drawn it with ink wash. In this comic, the premise of the Karate Kid series is that we know that Karate Kid and Princess Projectra are hot and heavy romantically. At first, we don't know why Karate Kid is sent back to the 20th century from the 30th century, but then they reveal that he's gone back at the behest of Projectra's father, King Vox, to prove his worthiness somehow for her hand in marriage.
Is that from issue 1 or is that just this most recent time?
I think in the letters page of this issue, they're like, we kind of revealed this last issue. So yeah, for a year, you didn't quite know it was this mysterious quest that he was on, I guess. And he's missing from the Legion comics. He's back here in New York City of the 20th century.
Sort of the unspoken behind the scenes reason for him being in the 20th century is because for whatever reason, anytime a Legion character gets his own series, it has to be set in the 20th century. And I think that's part of the reason the series kind of struggles to find its feet, because they cut him off from every once you take the guy who has karate in the far future and fights robots back to the present, he's just one of many karate characters that were around in the 70s. And maybe they were trying to capitalize on that a little bit, but it just really waters him down and kind of makes it a little aimless, I think.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely trying to capitalize on their karate guy. Like they've got a karate guy, and it's inconvenient that he's 1,000 years in the future. So they're kind of going to do their thing. And in the comic book marketplace, like I guess they think the Karate Kid can compete against Iron Fist and
Masters of
Shang-Chi. And
yes, right. And there were a couple DC ones as well, and I think even Ric Estrada might have drawn one of them, right?
That's right. He did a bunch of issues of Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter, and there's some of those where he's inking himself, and it's mind-blowingly good comic books. But a lot of those are kind of layouts by Estrada and kind of finished off by I'm kind of forgetting who the inker was on those.
Joe Staton again.
It might have been Estrada and Staton. I think Jack Abel was in some of these. I think Vince Coletta might have been. I know Coletta inked him on Wonder Woman, which is unfortunate. But yeah, so that's what this Karate Kid thing is all about. Like they put him in 20th century New York, but it's not like a gritty New York City of the 70s or anything like that.
It's a little, I don't know, it's a little silly to me. When I think about what makes me like Karate Kid is that he really stands out among the Legionnaires in that he has no powers, but he's somehow able to hold his own. You separate him out from that, he's just another 70s karate comic.
Yeah. I mean, I could see, a good karate comic could be a good comic, right?
Sure.
but I'm not sure that I mean I know after reading a lot of Legion comics that Paul Levitz isn't the guy to write a good karate comic.
Hmm.
And I don't know about these other artists, but like, yeah, when you see what they go through with this character in these comics, like, no, they just couldn't crack the code. And I don't think
Right.
it should be a difficult code, like cool fighting, but it's like, yeah, they got corny, bad supervillains. They got, he lives in an apartment and he has a nosy landlady
Hmm.
and he kind of has a girlfriend, but you're confused because he already had a girlfriend,
Right.
which they kind of address in this issue. Maybe we'll talk about it when we get to it.
Yeah, I think they could have. I mean, there are interesting stories to tell about a guy, a karate guy who's from the future. Like, but I don't think they utilize that very much. Like, it's not him trying to figure out how to get back to the future. It's not him. I don't think he spends much time worrying about radically changing the past and messing up the future or anything like that.
Yeah, he's not stranded in the past. He can go back and forth. I think even in this issue, he's
Right.
returning to the 20th century from the future. And so that's not a complication in his life.
They'd still want him for like key stories in the Legion, like big battles where all the Legionnaires get together. So a couple times he gets called back for that.
I guess it's totally logical that you mention the Richard Dragon comic because it's all about kung fu and they do fighting and they do training and there's like, you have to take it for the time period and for what it's worth, but there's like this, they go to Asia, and there's like that kind of stuff. Like
Right.
Richard Dragon is like this redheaded white guy who's a
Right.
master of all the martial arts. So that's kind of silly. That's almost more silly than Karate Kid. But I don't know. He knows kung fu. He trains in kung fu. He's got a best bro who trains in kung fu, and I think they have a tournament maybe, and they fight karate guys. But this is just like a superhero thing. So
Right.
it's like if they had Denny O'Neil, who created and wrote Richard Dragon, maybe work on the Karate Kid comic, or God forbid, cross them over. It might have made sense.
For sure. And yeah, it seems like some of this is time travel cliche by this point, but being that he's from Earth, would have been a good opportunity for him to like say run into his ancestor.
Oh yeah, classic, right? Just like Cosmic Boy did.
Right. Maybe get into the history of like his mentor. For all we know, what if he turns out his mentor is alive and young there 1,000 years earlier? What's going on there? Like, there's a lot of things they could have done with it. They didn't get around to or think to.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, like maybe you don't want to tie it too closely and be a deep dive into Legion of superhero stuff. He has a backstory, and I don't think they reveal it at all, except that
I was going to say there's that clan he's associated with.
the Ku Klux Klan.
No, different KK. Isn't he part of a
The Karate Kid clan? Yeah.
Aren't there some issues in the 70s Legion where there's I thought there was some like Foot Clan or something that he had some association with. Like, doesn't it come up later, like in the 80s issues with Timberwolf, maybe?
I can't remember. Yeah, that Timberwolf thing, like Timberwolf has to go to the planet of
Right.
Kung Fu assassins or whatever. I don't know if those are guys from earlier or that's new. I just don't remember. There was that issue, it's a Giffen issue where Karate Kid and Princess Projector are in a prison and Karate Kid is like, I just remember the splash page where Karate Kid's like chipping away at some like stalactite with a rock. You remember that one? And I don't know who those people are that captured him. It could have just been some of the usual Legion bad guys or somebody else. I don't remember that storyline.
And there's some stories where he goes home to Japan, right? And they go to like future Japan.
Yeah, and that Christmas story, he's in future Japan with the Christmas tree. He has a life outside of whatever they give him here. In the Karate Kid series, all you really know about him is that he's a Legionnaire. He's got this girlfriend. She's got a dad who's the king. And now here he is in the 20th century. He's got to pay the rent or whatever,
King Projector. Is that his name?
King Vox, VOXV, how you spell his name. I don't know how you pronounce it. Voxva or Vox 5. I doubt it. I think it's one
So how
letter.
does that work? Are they not using their last names, or do they like give themselves new names when they, like the Pope, when they become the king? I guess projector does
I
sound
don't know.
projector does sound kind of made
Never
up.
explained.
A little too on the nose.
It sounds like a
Right.
superhero name, but that's her real name, right? Yeah, he doesn't have like he has the same powers, right? Doesn't everybody have the illusion powers?
I thought, okay, she has magic powers as well, and I thought those were not related to what it is. So maybe one is like everyone on her planet could make illusions, and then she has magic on top of that.
I don't know. I don't think you'll find out by reading the Karate Kid series either.
Yeah, I love the inking is really good in this issue.
Mm-hmm. No, if you compare the solo finished art by Ric Estrada himself, compare it to the Joe Staten stuff, the Jack Abel stuff, the Coletta stuff,
Right.
it just blows it out of the water. I mean, I just don't understand how those guys didn't get it in a way. The Joe Staten is probably the best looking, but it's still not quite right. It's kind of a brush, and you can see when Estrada inks it himself, it doesn't have that brushy look. It doesn't have as much of that thick to thin type of brush strokes. It has stuff like this where it's like he took his dip pen and went to put in the shading, and like this stuff is like outlined with either a dip pen or a rapidograph or something, and it's like a kind of a fine line, flat line type of artwork. And to me, that's what looks the best, like comes over the best. The plot of this comic is that I'll flip back to the first page. Very cool time travel, um, time travel interpretation by Estrada here. He's in our time Legion time bubble, traveling into the past from the 30th century. He's returning to Earth, and when he gets there, he encounters some cavemen.
It's a very like the first page, it makes me think of like kind of like those Whitman or Dell science fiction comics that the later ones that they have kind of a Hanna-Barbera aesthetic to them or something. They're a little bit they remind me of like a 70s cartoon animation.
Yeah, like a Dan Spiegel comic or something, right?
Right. And he Estrada did a bunch of animation work, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
I think he actually worked on He-Man eventually, like in the 80s. But he I think he did Hanna-Barbera stuff in maybe the 70s.
I think so too. I don't remember what he was working on, but I do like, yeah, in that interview, right? Didn't he talk about working with or being a director on cartoons? And maybe not even doing as much of like storyboarding and design stuff, but directing, which is a different job in animation. And
Sure.
I mean, it's not even the same job as directing in a movie or a TV show. Animation director is kind of a different job, but
somebody needs to put together a book about this guy.
I think so too.
Tomorrow's somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a way to collect all those good looking drawings of his and those comic stories, but it's stuff that I don't know, nobody wants to see, I guess, except like me and you and whatever.
Right.
We'll have to make our own bootleg artist edition.
As soon as we finish the Keith Giffen book, that's long overdue. Should be like 3 or 4 of those by now.
There is no Keith Giffen artist edition. What the fuck? No Ric Estrada artist edition.
Get on it, people. That'll be our KFAB effect.
I hope.
You make books
for those almost 80 people who might see this. But yeah, he encounters cavemen back there, and then he discovers that he's not even in the real New York City. He runs into a wall and it cracks. It's like a Roadrunner cartoon. It's all fake. It's Major Disaster is the bad guy in this.
But the guy from the Radio Shack Superman story?
I guess so.
I think that if he ever had any kind of reputation as a good villain, I think it was probably ruined by this like Radio Shack ad that was like 20 pages long that was in the middle of every DC comic at some point in the 80s, where Superman has to defeat him using like the TSR little computer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It just made him seem like a made-up joke villain. Probably wouldn't have ended up on Justice League Antarctica if not for that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he fares too well in the Karate Kid series either, but he actually does have some competence here.
Right. An unusual amount. Like he's managed to travel through time here, which is kind of shocking. But and I think this was an attempt, like he's the closest attempt. They're trying to make him like a reoccurring villain for this guy, for Karate Kid, right?
I think so. I think he's in a couple, like he mentions how in a previous issue, or the footnote mentions that he was in a previous issue and stole some time machine from Star Labs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's in it again later, a couple issues later. There's not too many more issues after this. This is 11. I think it goes up to 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm. Should we talk about Ugly?
No. He befriends his caveman, and he instantly starts answering to the name Ugly. He says, "Back, right. Stay back, Ugly." And he says, "Thanks for the hand, Ugly."
Yeah, he just keeps calling him Ugly over and over.
Because that's the only English word the caveman ever says is Ugly. And so Karate Kid's like, okay, your name's Ugly. But the caveman helps him out and sacrifices his life for him at the end.
I think he lived, or it's left open, like, because.
Well, yeah, we don't see him die.
He makes some comment like, I hope Ugly was okay. I hope he got back. He says, I hope Ugly escaped safely.
Yeah, but like the context of that is that Major Disaster has decided to destroy the fake New York, which is located in prehistoric times.
Right.
Because he has his control over time travel now.
Right.
But the Karate Kid and Ugly decide to chase down Major Disaster, who Major Disaster presses the Supreme Calamity button.
Uh-huh.
And then he presses the City Self-Destruct button.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to make his escape. And Karate Kid and Ugly try to chase him down, but where is he? He's on top of the World Trade Center. And we haven't seen that in a while in reality, but it still existed back in the 70s when they were making this comic book.
Yes.
But what you might forget about the World Trade Center is that it was the tallest building in the world. Karate Kid climbs it. Ugly climbs up after him.
Mm-hmm.
But the city's collapsing. And so when Ugly is at the top of the World Trade Center tower, and as the city's collapsing, and throws Karate Kid onto the ship with Major Disaster, and those two get away, Ugly is not going to survive the collapse of the World Trade Center tower on September 11th, 2001.
I feel like maybe you're misinterpreting this whole scene. Like, I think the caveman is getting tired of Karate Kid calling him Ugly, because look at the way he's picked him up to throw him. He's like, he's throwing him off the building. He's throwing him at the other guy, like a projectile to throw at him.
Yeah, but it says he saves the life of the one who saved him.
Yeah, the narrator's being optimistic. Look at his
semantics, right?
Look at the way he's picking him up. He's like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Call me Ugly, will you? That's what he's saying right there.
Yeah. Well, definitely a primitive mind, because he does not get good revenge, because he saves Karate Kid and dooms himself.
Maybe. I think he survived. Maybe we'll see him again.
All right. I mean, we know for a fact that it's difficult to survive the collapse of the World Trade Center towers.
You had to make it real. Now I can't. Now I can't joke about it. Okay.
I wonder if Major Disaster used jet fuel to collapse that building.
Jesus. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there were really just explosives in there, or I think it might have been an inside job. I think some of the cavemen were across town, like laughing the whole time.
I bet Gerald Ford had something to do with it.
Yeah, they were cheering as it came down.
What even happens here? Somehow the Karate Kid beats up Major Disaster, and then he just takes him back to the present day of the 20th century. They were in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. Did he run out of time here? It's weird, and it's only 17 pages long, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Was
I mean,
that
there's ads. Yeah, it's 16, 17 pages. You're right.
this is practically a backup.
When you're used to reading DC Giants of the 70s that are 38 or 40
Right.
pages or whatever they are. When he gets back to the present day, the police are taking away Major Disaster for I don't know what crime he committed. It was in a million years ago, literally. No one else
Right.
saw it, but they're taking him away anyhow. Maybe he was wanted for some other crimes. And then Karate Kid goes back to his apartment after being gone a while, and this girl who's in love with him, Iris thinks that she might be in a blossoming romance with Karate Kid. She doesn't know about his life in the future. She just thinks he's a weird guy who knows karate and lives in her building. But then he's like, "Oh, I've missed you. You're a good friend." And she's like, "Well, shit."
And doesn't that kind of lead? Doesn't she turn into like a villain or something?
Yep.
That's right.
There's a funny scene where Karate Kid, in all his juvenile thoughtlessness, on the eve of his marriage to Princess Projector, goes back in time to invite this girl to his wedding. And she's like, "Oh, you came back to see me. You really want me
Right.
after all." And he's like, "I want to invite you to my wedding. I'm marrying a girl." And she's like, "Fuck you." But then even after that, somehow she gets to the 30th century and she gets turned into a supervillain, and they have to beat her up and then restore her. Brainiac 5 restores her to humanity.
Was she like made of metal or something weird?
Maybe it's like gems instead of metal.
Yeah. It's not this.
Oh yeah, Diamond Death. Yes, that is her.
So that's Karate Kid 14.
Oh, really? Maybe they don't restore her in Karate Kid. I think that they have to do it in a Legion comic.
Later, yeah. So it got ended early.
Yeah, I mean, this woman's life got really messed up just by knowing Karate Kid.
So careless, Val. Women's hearts.
And he didn't like her at all. Like, I don't know. He took advantage of her kindness, made her think that he might be her boyfriend.
It kind of seemed like they set it up like a solo series and they gave him a love interest and everything, like completely forgetting about what was going on in the future. Like it didn't matter anymore. And the fans got pissed. So they had to figure out a way to reconcile it and do something with her.
Evidently, in another issue, Projectra like confronts Iris and they fight. I don't know if they get physical or if they just yell at each other or somebody gets told off or something, but I don't know. I thought this was actually, for what it is a pretty solid comic book, really solid superhero comic book. In general, the Karate Kid series, yeah, it kind of stinks, but this one, I think it's kind of built like a fill-in issue.
Yeah.
Good kind of pacing until you get to the very end, of course, when they have to wrap up. But the I don't know, like the dynamacy of the artwork kind of keeps it going. Like there's these, this they did this in every issue, this kind of double page splash panel thing, like this, where it's a big splash across the bottom of 2 pages. But yeah, like the fighting and he's running. There are these scenes where he's running real fast and getting blasted.
Right.
And that's, I mean, I think that's all Estrada doing that, like these crazy forced perspective poses, this stuff where he's just falling.
Right.
I don't know. It's really readable.
Estrada is pulling on the weight this issue, in my opinion. Like it's not really the writing.
But that's what I want out of a comic in a
Right.
lot of cases. Like if like there's not much story, yeah, just go overboard. Do like a lot of sound effects, a lot of speed lines, a lot of
Hmm.
running and fighting. Like that's great. That's perfect. That's a perfect 70s superhero comic book. They're almost on the right track with this comic book, but they have to change their format again to accommodate more
Yeah.
superheroics and less kung fu fighting, I guess. I thought this was a good drawing right here where he's getting vibrated in an earthquake. Anytime I've ever tried to draw this kind of stuff, it's like I either put in too few lines or too many lines to make it look like they're shaking. This one looks
Right.
sufficiently blurry to me.
It's tricky. How do you do it so it doesn't look like they're just nervous or
Yeah.
taken aback or like there's different. But the way I guess maybe the difference is the lines are on the inside of the face instead of just radiating outside of them.
Hmm. Yeah. Takes a
Yeah.
master to know that because I don't know. I would have to try it both ways before I got it right.
Mm.
And in fact, I have to do this stuff for work all the time and I never get it right. I never like the way it comes out.
I noticed a few times he's doing a hiya, and it's a little confusing because it's written like it's an external sound effect.
Oh yeah, where was it? I
Um, Page 8.
I remember that one.
Of course, my son is a karate kid. He's in karate class, and he's actually almost he's trying out for his orange belt soon. And he says it's Kia with a K.
Oh, like that's an actual like karate word you say you scream out when you hit something?
Yeah, like Kia.
Oh.
I don't know if it's an actual word. I don't know, but it's what they use, mantra or battle cry.
But I didn't know that was an actual word. I thought that was just what somebody said when you karate chop something.
And like I said, I'm not sure it's like an official word, but it's a word they
Mhm.
use. It is a. I don't know that it means anything. I don't know that it's in the dictionary, David. I'm just saying
Well,
that's
maybe
what
it's
they
in the
say.
karate dictionary that like regular people don't have access to. Like it's in the
Yeah.
it's in the 36th chamber.
Never collected, right?
No. I don't think it ever will be collected. Why would it be? Probably. I'm going to wrap up this issue. Karate Kid 11. Good comic. Check it out. It's in a dollar bin near you. It's bananas.
Kia.